It will take quite a bit of time and around the world. This is the radio call of Vladimir Dzhanibekov, Svetlana Sobotskaya and Igor Folka will go to rendezvous with the Salyut 7 Soyuz T-12 orbital complex. The point of their touch and docking a few days ago was calculated by ballistics. In cosmonautics, especially in the case of controlling two or more apparatuses, there are no random time values. And although the speed of the ship in orbit is difficult to even imagine on Earth, 7 8/10 of a kilometer per second, the Mission Control Center always knows at what point a space object is located above our planet. The station crew has been in flight for the 6th month. The crew of the Soyuz T-12 completes the first day. The Pomerians have now entered an acute period of adaptation to weightlessness. The Earth reluctantly lets people out of its embrace. The blackness of space around, but what is called the Earth's memory, probably, allows a person to live outside our planet. And it is quite natural that the memories of the star city that have been present in orbit over the past 20-odd years are much more than any other. After all, most often I remember the house, and the cosmonaut's house, the starry one. It was a little less than 2 weeks ago. The crew parted with the town, with relatives, with friends. Igor Volk was escorted into space for the first time, although the farewell and meetings in his life of a test pilot would have been enough for 10, only before they were escorted to the plane, and now to the spaceship. Svetlana Sobotskaya goes on her second flight. Vladimir Dzhanibekov is the fourth. By hand. Simple. Does not interfere. Igor Petrovich Volk is the oldest in this crew, and he has the third place in the ship, to the right of the commander. The place of the cosmonaut, researcher. In her last flight, this place was occupied by Svetlana Sobotskaya, and now she has moved. She's a flight engineer now. Well, Dzhanibekov has always been in the central chair. In all 4 flights he was the commander. At the end of the business trip, I look, they don't go anywhere, nothing. I come, I distribute lunch. Here. The characters gathered here are very strong and, of course, we needed some time to find our own style and work. And this style is found. Well, fortunately, it's not much different from the style that I developed in my relationships with other crews. And I would say that it was not very difficult for me to get used to this team.
The flight that you will go on is not only the knowledge of new technology, a new look at the Earth, but also the knowledge of yourself.
Absolutely. If not even first of all.
That is, the first means to congratulate yourself after all.
So, what should I do? After all, the world is still passed through itself and through its consciousness. Only such feedbacks make it possible, if you have something, to recycle what you are and then highlight, then this is the creation of a new one. And that's the only way it happens for everyone. A lot of people look at the same phenomenon, and someone took it, looked at it and rethought it. You look, something new has appeared. Well, it didn't appear, it exists. It was discovered, it was known, so it was building a harmonious system. And now thousands of people are wondering how they didn't see it before, didn't notice it. You can't call your whole life and work monotonous. Igor Volk spent about 5,000 hours in the air at the controls of the plane. 2,700 of them are in the cockpit of new cars, working in test mode. And it would not be an exaggeration to say that he risked his life on every flight. And many times he had to make the only right decisions in extreme conditions. But in all the dynamic operations in the upcoming space flight and at the launch site, and at the time of docking, and on landing, the role he was assigned was not yet the most important thing. But conducting experiments at the station is his main business, and the control handle of the ship is from Donat Zanabekov. Well, it will be, I found out how.
Nearby it will tear.
Will be, in what is now more or less done. Only snow. This one, what do we call it? That's one, right? His tone is also exactly the same as this one. Training on the simulator tasks. Training on working out the elements of the docking. So, well. I don't care at all that I'm in third place. They have a lot to learn. Each of my crew members. I'm happy to do it in silence. What should I do?
If not from the frames.
No, in this case, every time at pre-flight press conferences, the question arises about the specialization of operators in space orbit. Svetlana Sovetskaya, before her first flight, and now is ready to categorically reject even the allowed expressed idea of any indulgences for women in space. That's what she said, I'm not going to be a flight attendant at the station. Of course, this is not a position for a second-class pilot, a multiple world record holder in aeronautical sports. Right now you see one interview for the Time program that Svetlana Sovetskaya gave about 5 years ago.
Yes, indeed, I flew on different planes, but this is the first record I set on a passenger car designed by Alexander Sergeyevich Yakovlev. The ease of operation, ease of control of the aircraft, the convenience of the cabin layout and very high reliability allowed a crew of 2 people to work successfully on this aircraft.
Sveta Savitskaya is a very experienced pilot, an experienced test pilot and generally an accomplished personality. We will not tell the women now, then I consider her as crew members. So, as a member of the crew, this is a strong link, she complements them and somewhere with her feminine caution, more so even sometimes with a thoughtful attitude, she warns them about the relationship. More scrupulously. After all, here, you know, when there is a woman in the male environment, well, men somehow begin to behave differently. This is already inherent in the nature of human nature.
Alexei Arkhipavich Leonov gave this interview to our correspondent at Baikonur before the first flight of Svetlana Sovetskaya. Well, everything repeats itself, and in this crew, Svetlana Evgenievna has a beneficial effect on men. However, the main requirement that is imposed on the members of the space crew, to understand each other in any difficult situations, will be fully met here also because all 3 are pilots. And although they had to work not in the atmosphere on which the aircraft wing rests, but behind the atmosphere, and the laws of motion of vehicles in space are completely different than in the clouds. Endurance, concentration, quickness of reaction unite the world. During the entire pre-flight preparation period, the heat was unbearable on Baikonur. You see, the step is cracked. There were days when the wind did not stir a leaf. This cloud hung over the TV tower from morning to night. On days like these, mirages are seen in the desert, the phenomenon of Fata Morgana. And the training, despite the heat, was carried out in full. And the astronauts spent more than 1 hour in total on the ortho table in the position of the head below the legs, training the vestibular. And for sure, the ignorance of the white castles of the Fata Morgana was constantly before the eyes of the crew commander, and the upcoming flight program, studied to the niceties, and the regime of the upcoming stage. And in the Periolus chair, one of the most unloved astronauts in the simulator, Ginny was already mentally winding the near-Earth hatches for centuries. And in the installation and testing building of the Cosmodrome, despite the heat, everything went according to the regular program. The last tests of the Soyuz T-12 spacecraft were completed, the astronauts were placed inside the stowage, the final adjustment of the instruments was carried out. And now you see, the slipways have been pushed apart and the ship begins to raise its horizontal position. The final touches in the work of the installer. Now the fairing will begin rolling on the ship's branch. The fairing is needed at the moment of launch for hundreds of seconds, no more, in order to shelter the ship from the pressure of oncoming air, which hits at this moment like a hammer. But, like everything in a ship and a rocket, it is an important construction. On the day when the fairing was being rolled in the assembly and testing building, the correspondents of the program time contacted the board of the Salyut 7 station. The 6th month of the flight of Leonid Kazin, Vladimir Solovyov and Oleg Otkov began. The astronauts, you see, showed us a huge, as they say, papyrus, on which hundreds and hundreds of experiments already performed were marked.
And probably nothing pleases a person as much as a big job. We work according to the documentation and we have quite a lot. So if it shows everything right away.
As you can see, this is only part of the technical documentation according to which the crew is working on board.
This is just part of it. Here's another part here, in general. But the most important thing is that we.
Now the new program begins on board the orbital complex. The day came and the launch vehicle and the ship moved to the launch site. Only a day remained before the launch of the Soyuz T-12. 10 pre-flight Baikonur days were coming to an end.